For years, my mom treated me like a maid simply because I reminded her of my biological father. She never hid her resentment, and life with her was pure misery. But when my father left me a decent inheritance, she suddenly claimed she deserved a share, despite the way she had always treated me. Why couldn't you just look a little more like me? My mother snapped one day when I tried to talk to her again. I was 7. I didn't know what was worse, her cold stare or the way she looked at me like I was some broken object. That was the first time I realized my face was a mistake I'd be paying for the rest of my life. My name is Brooke. I'm 22. I grew up in a house where no one ever said my name with warmth. My mom had 3 daughters: Mindy, the oldest, her pride; Sienna, the middle one, her soft spot; and me, the youngest, her disgrace. My face, my eyes, even my laugh reminded her of a man she never wanted to remember: my biological father. I became the living proof of her betrayal. When I was 9, the house got quieter. The man I thought was my dad started pulling away. No more jokes, no hugs, no asking how school was. Then one day, he just left. Gone. All that was left behind was my mom and the constant irritation in her voice. Later, I found out he had taken a DNA test. Mindy was his daughter. Sienna and I weren't. After that, everything changed. My mom admitted each of us had a different father. And while Sienna still had her eyes, her mouth, her smile, there was nothing of her in me. Nothing she wanted to see. I wasn't hit or locked up. But I was erased in every other way. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I became a task. Cleaning, laundry, dishes, serving food, making beds. That was my job. I didn't argue. I became a shadow. I got almost no new clothes. Everything I wore had already been worn by my sisters. I didn't have toys. When I asked for one, she'd say, "You don't need that. Be useful instead." Even when I got sick, she hardly noticed. I once had a fever for a week. She tossed me a pill and said, "Drink some water and don't die. We don't need drama." When I turned 13, I ran away. It wasn't a threat or a cry for help. I just couldn't breathe in that house anymore. The police found me a day later and brought me back. I tried to explain. There were no beatings, but there was no love either. They asked, "Does she hit you? Lock you in?" I said no, and they dropped it. My mom cried in front of them. "She's just jealous of her sisters. I'm raising them alone." No one believed me. I didn't even have the right to be heard. After that, she stopped speaking to me for weeks at a time. My sisters started mocking me openly. Mindy told me I destroyed the family, that our dad left because of me. Sienna repeated it like a chorus. I started staying out as much as possible. I picked up odd jobs: walking dogs, cleaning windows, working at the little shop on the corner. Anything was better than being in that house. At first, I spent the money on food. Buying myself a pastry felt like luxury. Then I saved up for a sweatshirt. It was gray and worn, but it was mine. From that point on, I decided I'd earn. I'd study. I'd save. I would get out. Not just leave. Escape for good. One day, I wrote in a little notebook, "I'm not someone's mistake. I'm just a person." That was my first truth. From then on, I knew. The notebook and the money in my pocket were all I had, and they would have to be enough to pull me out of a place where I was never really wanted. When I graduated high school, I was 19. I passed my exams, got a piece of paper with my name on it, and went home to pack. Home is a generous word. It was just a place where I was tolerated. I threw all my things into a backpack: 3 t-shirts, a sweatshirt, a makeup bag, and my notebook. No gifts, no congratulations. Mindy told me it was a waste to even finish school. "You'll end up working retail anyway." I left. Just closed the door behind me and didn't look back. I found a cheap room in a neighborhood that smelled like fried onions and mold. The landlady was grumpy but didn't ask questions. No one cared where my parents were. I got a low-paying job at a small insurance sales office, cold calling strangers. I hated it, but it was mine. And I got paid. My money. My mom found me 3 weeks later. She showed up at the office pretending to be some loving mother. "You're my baby. Why pay strangers when you could live with us and give the money to me?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Pay her to live in the hell I escaped? I told her I was never coming back. For a second, I saw rage in her eyes that genuinely scared me. A year went by. I worked, paid rent, saved a little. Sometimes I saw Sienna. She worked at a salon near mine. We didn't talk, just nodded in passing. One day I asked, "Do you know who your dad is?" She shrugged. "Mom said he doesn't want to see me." My mom had told me the exact same thing. It felt too convenient, too rehearsed. A few months later, my mom came back, this time asking for money. She was drowning in bills, couldn't pay the mortgage, and wanted a loan. I said I'd help, if she told me my father's name and where to find him. At first, it was yelling, guilt-tripping, tears. Then finally, she caved. Gave me a name. No details. I pushed. She handed me an address, then told me not to go. Said he didn't want to see me, that I'd ruin his life if I showed up. But I didn't care. I needed to know. I saved for another 2 months, bought a bus ticket, and went. It took me 2 days with transfers and a night on an airport bench. When I found the address, it was fake. Nobody there knew my name. I came home furious and crushed. I screamed at my mother, threatened legal action. She cried and said she was just protecting me. His family didn't know about me. "Do you want to destroy everything?" she said. The next day, she gave me another address, 4 hours away. She still insisted he'd reject me. I didn't care. I got on a bus. All the way there, I kept repeating, "If he turns me away, then I have no one left." I was ready for a closed door, a cold stare, "You need to leave." But when he opened the door, he just looked at me and said, "Hey, sweetheart." And then he hugged me. It was the warmest touch I'd ever felt. No questions, no hesitation. Just arms around me like I mattered. For once in my life, someone hugged me like they meant it. We sat on the porch. He poured me some tea, then said something that made my hands shake. He'd been paying child support all these years, monthly, for years. He thought I knew. My mother told him I hated him, that I didn't want to meet, that I had a stepdad and a stable life. She lied to both of us. He admitted he had a wife, 2 grown sons, a whole life. He didn't want to risk destroying it, so he just kept paying and believing the silence was mutual. He didn't know I'd been sleeping under hand-me-down blankets and being punished for having his eyes. He didn't know I was hated for being his reflection. I didn't come back the same. After that trip to see my father, it felt like I'd shed an old skin. I wasn't the brook you could break, silence, or drag back. He said he wanted to help, but couldn't risk his family. He offered money, support, visits. I said no. At the time, I was too disappointed to say anything else. I went back to my little neighborhood that smelled like burnt toast and old wires and got back to work. Same shift, same customers, same register. But something in me had shifted. For the first time, I felt like I existed as a person, not just a function. 2 weeks later, my father sent a letter. A real one. No check inside. Just words. He wrote that he couldn't stop thinking about our meeting, that he regretted not being there, that he wished he could take everything back. I folded the letter and placed it inside the same notebook where I'd written, at 13, "I'm not a mistake." But I still felt empty. I had the truth, but it didn't make anything easier. I looked in the mirror and didn't see a girl who found her dad. I saw the same shadow that had nowhere to go. I didn't know what to do with this house inside me where my mother's voice still lived, the one that whispered, "You don't belong." One night, I stayed late at work. We had a new guy, Logan. Quiet, tired eyes, ink on his fingers. He didn't talk much, and maybe that's why I felt calmer around him. We were the only 2 left. He smoked while I mopped the floor. "You want coffee?" he asked without looking. "Only if it's free," I replied. He smiled, not sarcastically, just gently. We sat on the old couch in the back room where it smelled like dust and cardboard. He asked why I hadn't joined anyone over the weekend. I shrugged. Then he said, "You look at people like you're waiting for a hit." I didn't know how to answer, and he didn't press it. That night, for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. I didn't tell him anything, but I let myself exist next to someone who didn't ask me to prove I was worth his time. We started spending quiet moments together. He'd bring me tea sometimes, leave notes that said, "You're doing better than you think." The first time he touched my hand, I flinched. I wasn't used to being touched without it meaning control. I didn't pull away. I looked at him, trying to figure out what would come next. He didn't move, just held my hand. One night, we stayed even later than usual. The lights were low, the air thick. He said he could tell from day one that I was different. I asked, "Different how?" He said, "Someone who's been through too much to fake a smile." He leaned closer, and I didn't move away. We kissed. Software. Hesitant, like neither of us believed it was allowed. I had never been in a relationship, ever. No one had ever told me I was beautiful or wanted. And yet, there I was, on the floor beside someone who saw me, not my face. It was the simplest kiss in the world, and the hardest. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because it felt wrong, but because something inside me was collapsing. This wall I'd built, the belief that I wasn't meant for love. I had spent years flinching at kindness, but Logan didn't ask anything of me. He was just there. The next day, I walked home and didn't feel afraid. But when I opened my phone, everything flipped. Messages from Mom, 5. From Sienna, 2. A new post from Mindy. When your sister's the disgrace of the family but still thinks she deserves happiness. Attached was a cropped photo. Me and Logan standing outside the store. I hadn't realized anyone was watching. Maybe neighbors. Maybe coworkers. Either way, it was their way of reminding me. I wasn't allowed to feel alive. At first, I didn't even know what I felt when I saw the post. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was something older, something deeper. That familiar ache that crawls under your skin when someone rips open your chest and puts a sign over your heart. Look, she actually thinks she deserves to be happy. The photo was blurry, taken from a distance. Logan and I stood near the store entrance, his hand barely grazing mine. We weren't even hugging, but it was enough. The caption read, "When the family disgrace thinks she can have a normal life." Mindy knew exactly where to aim. Not directly. She liked cutting where it still bleeds. I stared at my screen for a long time. I couldn't bring myself to close the app. It felt like if I did, it would make it real. I kept wondering who had taken the photo. Someone from work? A neighbor? A friend of Mindy's? I didn't know, but I knew one thing for sure. They were watching, waiting for me to fall apart again. Sienna texted, "Maybe stop embarrassing yourself." No emoji, no context, just a hit. My mom called. I didn't answer. Something inside me clicked into survival mode. I wasn't going to be their target again. Not this time. That night, I didn't go to work. I stayed home. I turned off my phone and laid on the floor. Not the bed, not the couch. The floor. It made it easier to feel real. I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out when they decided I didn't have the right to make choices, to feel things, to mess up. When did I become something they could own? Logan texted. I didn't respond. Not because I was mad, because I didn't know how to be near someone when the world was trying to drag me back under. He didn't push. He just sent one message. If you need silence, I'm here. If you need to leave, I'm still here. 2 days later, I went back to work. Hair pulled back, calm face, everything inside trembling. Logan looked at me but didn't say anything. We worked like usual, but he left a cup of tea on my desk. No note, no pressure, just kindness. And I realized I didn't want to run. During lunch, I stepped outside, took a picture of myself in front of the store and posted it. No caption, no filters, no explanation, just me. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to breathe. The backlash came fast. Mom texted first. Aren't you ashamed? Then Mindy. You're disgracing our name. Then Sienna. It's not too late to delete it. But I wasn't the girl who used to erase herself to fit inside their small, bitter world. 3 days later, my mom showed up at work. No warning. Cold face, voice laced with fake concern. She walked past the customers like they didn't exist and stood right in front of me. We need to talk, she said. At work, I only talk to customers, I replied. She hissed. You're making yourself out to be a victim, but I raised you. I looked at her. The same woman who fed me leftovers, blamed me for her failed marriage, ignored me when I needed warmth. And she really believed she'd raised me. You didn't raise me, I finally said. You just failed to destroy me. She left. But I knew it wasn't over. She never left without making a scene. And I was right. A few days later, I got a call from the rental agency that was helping me lease the house my father had given me. The agent said he brought a potential tenant to see the place, but someone was already living there. 2 women. They claimed the house was theirs and kicked everyone out. The agent was confused. He'd already brought other clients, but they all vanished after visiting. I asked him to send me a photo. And I wasn't even surprised. It was my mom and Mindy. I didn't call ahead. I didn't warn them. Only the rental agent knew I was coming. He told me, I'll bring a copy of the documents. Don't worry. I nodded. But of course I worried. Because I knew, inside that house wasn't just furniture. It was the system I grew up in. The one where I was always on the bottom rung. When I arrived, I nearly felt sick. Not from fear, from rage. This was my house. The only place that had ever been given to me willingly. A space I could finally build something from. And they just broke in. Like they still had some kind of claim over me. I opened the gate. The front door was ajar. There were bags on the porch, some boxes. My mother sat in a chair on the veranda. Mindy stood next to her, arms crossed like she was at a trial. When they saw me, they froze. "This isn't what it looks like," my mom started, rising to her feet. I walked right past her, said nothing. I stepped inside. The house smelled like dust and detergent. Their stuff was everywhere. Shoes on the floor, Mindy's jacket on the couch, dirty dishes in the sink. I didn't yell. I just started carrying things out. "Please wait." Mindy rushed toward me. "We can explain." "Get out," I said quietly. "This isn't yours." My mom grabbed her purse and tried to block the doorway. "You don't understand." Her voice rose. "We had nowhere else to go. They kicked us out. We didn't know where else to turn." "What does that have to do with me?" I looked her straight in the eye. "This isn't a hotel. It's not a shelter. It's not payment for motherhood. It's my house." Mindy started crying. Loudly. Performatively. She clung to the doorway, shouting about how heartless I was, how ungrateful. I'd heard it all before. Since childhood. Same script. That's when the police arrived. A neighbor had called about the yelling. The agent showed the paperwork, confirmed the house was in my name. One of the officers, an older man, gave me a sympathetic look. "Did they ever hit you?" he asked. I smirked. Number just humiliated me every day of my life. "Then it's civil. We can remove them now, but a restraining order would be unlikely. No criminal history. First offense." I nodded. That was enough. I just wanted them gone. And they left. Crying, shouting, accusing. My mom turned back as she walked down the steps and spat. "I hope one day you understand how hard it was to raise you." I didn't respond, because I knew she hadn't raised me. I had survived in her presence. I stayed behind, alone in the silence. I walked through the rooms. The furniture was crooked, the windows dusty. But it was mine. My walls. My space. I wiped my hands on my jeans and sat on the floor. Not because I was tired, because I wanted to feel that moment settle in my bones. That evening, I called my father. Told him everything. He was quiet for a while, then said, "I'll install security cameras. I'll make sure you're protected. Don't be scared. You're not alone anymore." I listened, and for the first time, I didn't flinch at being helped. He wasn't asking permission. He just stepped in. Not because I begged him to, but because he wanted to. Because it was right. A week later, I signed a lease with the agency. The house was rented out. Nothing fancy, but stable. For the first time in my life, I was earning from something that was mine. Not from being small. Not from staying silent. Just mine. I ran into Sienna sometimes. She works nearby. Sometimes she nods. Sometimes she avoids me. We're not close. But she stays out of my life. That's enough. Mindy disappeared. Then I found out. She married a widower with 2 kids. He has a house. An inheritance. Of course, Mom moved in with them. Where else would she go? Sometimes I dream I'm back in the old house, carrying trays of food, being screamed at over cold water. But then I wake up, and I remember it's over. I don't hide anymore. Logan suggested we get away for a few days. No plans, no schedule, just drive. I said no at first. Work, rent, silence. It was easier to hide behind all of it than admit I was scared. But he didn't push. He just said, "If you ever want to go, just let me know." A week later, I texted him. "Let's go." We left early in the morning. The music was low, the road was empty, and he brought me coffee from a gas station. He didn't ask if I was okay. I was. For the first time in a long time, I was. The road felt clean. No mother, no Mindy, no shouting. Just spring air and the sound of tires humming against the pavement. We stopped in a small town that looked like every other town but somehow felt different. It smelled like bread and old pine. We found a cheap motel with yellow walls and creaky doors. 1 chair, 2 towel hooks, and I felt like I'd checked into paradise. We walked around, ate seasoned fries, drank lemonade from glass bottles. Logan bought me ice cream and said, "You're the only adult I actually trust." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it caught me off guard. No one had ever said that to me, especially not kindly, without expectation. That was the moment I realized I could be next to someone and not be ashamed of myself. We sat barefoot by a lake while the sun set soft and slow. I told him, not everything, but enough. That I wasn't hit, but broken. That I was told over and over, "You're a mistake. that I grew up breathing shame like air. He didn't interrupt, didn't pity me. When I stopped talking, he didn't hug me or say something cliche. He just sat there. And I felt, maybe for the first time, that speaking out didn't come with a punishment. On the way back, I fell asleep in the passenger seat. Sunlight spilled through the window, and for once, my head was quiet. When I woke up, the car wasn't moving. He'd pulled over so I could rest without the bump of the road. He was just sitting there, watching the traffic. When he noticed I was awake, he said, "You sleep like someone who knows how. Just not someone who's been given the chance." I smiled. It was the most honest compliment I'd ever heard. When we got back, I wasn't afraid. My mom hadn't texted, Mindy hadn't posted, Sienna hadn't reached out. It was quiet. But for once, I wasn't bracing for impact. I just sat in the stillness, and I didn't feel guilty for it. I made myself tea, pulled a chair to the window, and wrote in my notebook, "I know how to laugh. Not out of defense. Not out of pain. Just laugh." The next day, my father called. He said the cameras were installed, the house secured. He sent me a photo, new locks, trimmed yard, alarm system. I thanked him, then added, "I'm enrolling in college." There was a pause. Then he said, "You're doing the best thing you can. I'm proud of you." I hung up. My heart was racing, not because of what he said, but because he'd said it at all. I signed up for evening classes, nothing fancy. Just a start. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. I gave myself the green light. That evening, I stopped by Logan's. He didn't ask how things went, just poured me tea and said, "We'll go again. Somewhere else. Someday." I nodded. "Only with you." It started with a letter. Folded into thirds, no return address, just my name in familiar handwriting. For a second, my stomach twisted. Not fear. Reflex. I stared at the envelope for hours before opening it. Inside was a long note from my mother, written in looping dramatic cursive. The kind of writing she used when she wanted to sound gentle, like she hadn't made my childhood a quiet war. She called it a message of peace. Said she wanted to talk things through. Said she missed me. Then halfway through, it shifted. "After everything I did for you, the least you could do is share what you've been given. It's not just your father's house. It's part of your history, too." There it was, the truth buried in false warmth. She didn't want peace. She wanted a peace. I didn't respond. A few days later, another letter came. This time, she wrote about how she'd raised me alone, how hard it was to be a single mom, how I'd taken after the wrong side. Then she listed things she claimed to have done for me. Food, school, a roof over my head. Every sentence ended with, "And this is how you repay me?" I let the letter sit on the counter, unopened after the first paragraph. I wasn't playing that game again. Then came the call from my father. "She showed up at my work," he said flatly. "What?" I almost dropped my phone. She waited outside, tried to hand me a letter. Told my secretary I owed her a conversation, that you were turning against your entire family. He sighed. I told her if she ever shows up again, I'll file a restraining order. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you need right now." But it was. It was exactly what I needed to hear, because it confirmed what I already knew. She hadn't changed. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted access. To me, to my life, to what she thought she deserved. I walked for a long time that night. Past my old bus stop, past the houses that still smelled like wet lawns and leftover dinner. The neighborhood was still there, but I was no longer part of it. Sienna texted the next morning. "She's saying you poisoned Dad against her." "Which dad?" I replied. She didn't answer. Later that week, I got a message from someone I didn't know, a woman named Eliza. She introduced herself as the wife of Sienna's biological father. Apparently, he lived overseas and had recently reached out after Sienna found him through a DNA test. But it hadn't gone well. He'd denied contact for years. Now that Sienna had pushed her way in, the family was split. And Eliza wanted me to understand the damage we were causing. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't causing damage. I wasn't breaking families. I was just done pretending mine was whole. At work, Logan asked if I was okay. I said yes. I wasn't sure if I meant it, but I said it anyway. Later, he left a note in my locker that said, "You don't owe anyone a second chance at breaking you." I pinned it to the fridge. That weekend, I deleted every saved number that led back to that old house. Mom, Mindy, their neighbors, a cousin who only texted when gossip was hot. I blocked them all. Then I turned off my phone and went to the library to register for my first college class. Introduction to Sociology. I walked out of the building with a student ID in my hand, and I swear I felt lighter, like something big had ended, and I didn't even need a funeral for it. I caught my reflection in a glass door. For once, I didn't flinch. This face doesn't belong to anyone but me. The first day of college felt surreal, not because of the classroom or the professor, not even the squeaky desks or the other students, most of them younger than me. It felt surreal because I was there by choice. No one pushed me. No one shamed me into proving anything. I just wanted it. For me. I sat in the back, took notes, listened. And somewhere between a lecture on social systems and a discussion about generational trauma, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Not numbness. Not shutdown. Just still. That night, I came home to my apartment and made dinner. A small thing. Pasta and steamed broccoli. I lit a candle, not because anyone was coming over, but because I liked the smell. I put on a playlist of soft piano. I ate in silence, not loneliness. There's a difference. I no longer checked my phone every 5 minutes. No more dread over messages I didn't want to read. No more wondering what they'd say next, how they'd spin it, how they'd try to crawl back in. I had made room for myself. And I wasn't sharing it with anyone who treated me like a liability. A week later, I walked past my old neighborhood. I hadn't meant to. It was a shortcut back from the library. I didn't even realize where I was until I turned a corner and saw the small brown house. The porch sagged the way it always had. The window on the second floor still had the old curtain, faded now. I stopped across the street. For a second, the air felt heavy, like a memory wanted to crawl back in, but it didn't. I looked up at that house and didn't feel rage, or sorrow, or pity. I just felt done. As I turned to leave, I saw her, my mother, standing at the window, watching. Her face was older. Her eyes were the same. For a second, our eyes met. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look away. She didn't wave. I didn't either. I walked on. That night, I wrote in my notebook, on the very last page, "You are not broken. You were just never allowed to unfold." I used to think surviving meant escaping. Now I know it's more than that. It's staying soft when the world wants to harden you. It's choosing peace when chaos is familiar. It's letting your voice be heard, even when no one claps. Logan picked me up after class the next day. We didn't talk much. Just drove, windows down, fingers laced between us on the console. "You look different," he said at a red light. "Yeah?" "Yeah," he smiled, like someone who knows she doesn't owe anyone anything. I laughed. Not defensively, not nervously, just because it felt good. I'm not the villain in their story. I'm not the victim either. I'm not a mistake, a burden, a secret to hide, or a favor owed. I'm the author now, and my story is just beginning.